Dear viewers in Nigeria, greetings from Scotland. My name is Graham Deans, and amongst other things, I'm a hymn writer. I was delighted with the recent Chopin music presentation of my hymn written in response to the coronavirus pandemic. And I must commend the two organists for their sensitive playing, and also to the soloist Wanyina, whose singing was both beautiful and profoundly moving. Lanre has asked me to share with you how I came to write the hymn and choose the tune. The story is as follows. I've been a minister of the Church of Scotland for over 40 years, and I've been a member of the Hymn Society of Great Britain and Ireland since 1993. Although I'm now retired, I remain active and help out whenever I can. In March of this year, I was asked by a colleague who'd fallen ill, not as it transpired with the coronavirus, but who nevertheless had to self-isolate, if I could possibly conduct public worship in his church on the Sunday morning. I agreed to do so, but before any preparations could even begin, the entire country was ordered into lockdown and all services of worship were immediately cancelled. This hit me particularly hard, for although the silencing of the songs of the people of God is not without precedence, as Psalm 137 verse 4 tells us, many of us were deeply dismayed that the coronavirus appeared to have succeeded in doing what neither two world wars nor any systematic persecutions had ever been able to accomplish. The swift imposition of such a strict lockdown, which closed all places of worship, has caused people to feel effectively sentenced to a form of house arrest and forced them into a real spiritual exile, which has produced a very deep crisis of faith. Where, they ask, is God in all of this? What future is there for the church? Where is our hope to be found? As I wrestled with such questions, my mind took me back to when I had to study Albert Camus' novel La Peste, which is currently experiencing a boom in sales. That book tells the story of how a devastating plague spread by rats spread with alarming speed through the French Algerian city of Oran. Oran had indeed suffered from several outbreaks of plague in the past, but Camus' novel describes a fictional epidemic during which Oran was forced into lockdown as the city gates were closed to prevent the spread of infection. When its trapped citizens struggled to make sense of their plight, the city's hard-line Jesuit priest, Father Panelu, preached a sermon in which he argued that the plague was divine in origin and punitive in purpose. Critical times inevitably pose challenges to the community of faith, but they also tend to produce inept and inappropriate theological responses. As the fictional Father Panelu began to realize all too late when he was struck by the death of an innocent child from the plague. This forced him to begin to modify his opinions, which he expressed in a second sermon. But days later, he himself fell ill with unusual symptoms and subsequently died. Believing that the coronavirus is neither divine in origin nor punitive in purpose, and rejecting Camus' existentialist philosophy that life is ultimately meaningless and absurd, I've sought to make a more appropriate theological, pastoral, and spiritual response to the pandemic, which has posed such a powerful challenge to the community of faith. It's been said that hymn writers are the practical theologians of this age. I've been writing hymns for many years now, and this one came to me over a couple of days during that first week of lockdown. As it came together, the meter suggested the tune Aurelia, which is traditionally associated with the hymn, "The Church is One Foundation." My hymn begins with an acknowledgement of the observation made by the Reverend Dr. Fergus MacDonald in a pastoral message to the Free Church of Scotland on the 23rd of March 2020 that the current global crisis had brought us to our knees. I've chosen to interpret that observation as a deliberate double entendre. Firstly, it recognises the paralysing effect of the virus upon society. But secondly, the expression is a powerful metaphor of how we're driven to our knees in prayer in order to appeal for God's help to ensure that the battle against a sinister and invisible enemy can indeed be won. Our prime concern in such prayer is therefore for all who are directly or indirectly affected by illness and disease, and for those who are becoming increasingly anxious as they search for answers but find none. Perhaps, however, at such times, it's more important to be asking the right questions. The second verse of the hymn correctly anticipated the continuing and deepening sense of desperation as the virus appeared to be able to spread unchecked and unhindered, a fact which has impacted strongly upon our mental and spiritual health, and our growing sense of impatience as the lockdown has proved to be much more prolonged and protracted than anyone would either have wished or even anticipated. It's been claimed that the best defence against coronavirus is your front door. But that is not strictly true. No home can be hermetically sealed against the source of infection. The sinister and invisible enemy can still get through doors, particularly through the keyhole and the letterbox, but it's not the only thing that can do that. Think of how the fourth Gospel records that the disciples of Jesus were in lockdown on the evening of the first Easter day. All of them feeling fearful, disappointed, deflated, defeated, disillusioned and demoralised by the things that had recently taken place. They felt quite unwilling and completely unable to face society ever again. However, events took an unexpected turn, for the locked doors proved to be no barrier to the risen and living Christ, who met the disciples where they were and offered them his comfort and his peace, thereby renewing their courage and releasing them from their doubts and their fears. The conviction that he can do the same for us by filling our lives with the same shalom, that peace and sense of well-being which passes human understanding, will enable us to face the future with greater confidence and faith, for in God alone shall we find our health and our salvation. Thank you for watching and listening. You can find out more about the Hymn Society of Great Britain and Ireland on its website www.hymnsocietygbi.org.uk, all in lowercase.